Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
You could literally get anything made. It's just a matter of putting the research in and just figuring it out. But literally, it's all within reach, which is crazy.
All right, we are back. Once again, this is the Pencil Kings podcast. And before we dive into today's interview, I would like you, if you would like to support this podcast and see more episodes, because I know a lot of people have been asking me for more episodes. And the reality is that this stuff takes time and it actually does take money. It's not just me sitting here editing. We do have an editor and we do have a writer that puts together these posts on our website. So if you would like to support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/pencilkings. That's patreon.com/pencilkings. And there we've got 3 different reward tiers. The lowest one is $1 every 2 weeks. And you can see what that's all about. But yeah, if you want more episodes, this is the way to do it. We've got our kind of goals. Once we hit it, then we can do more episodes. So now that that is out of the way, let's talk once again to Dennis Brown. Dennis was on the show, I don't know, do you remember when? I can't remember when we released the episode, but I want to say it was in August, maybe late August.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think it was like
Dennis had, yeah. And so Dennis has one of the things that's special about Dennis, or that I think is special. I don't know if you feel this way, but was his ability to jump into different styles. So that's what we talked about last time, about how he is able to transition and just have this like very clear break, because I know a lot of people are curious about, how do I come up with a style? How do I change my style? And you seem to be like a master at just jumping.
Too kind, thanks.
and not like in a bad way. Like you're pulling it off every time. But once we finished the episode, then we got to talking a little bit more, and Dennis was telling me about all this. I'm just going to call it merch. I'm sure you have a better word for it, but like merchandising. So taking your art and bringing it into the physical realm and not just in prints, because I think when people think art, it's easy to think posters, prints, but what about going beyond that? So Dennis has been prepping for a convention, and so he's just right in the thick of it right now. And so it's a perfect time to catch him to understand all the stuff that he's going through, how he's prepping for a convention, what kind of products he's been working on, maybe some of the products he's done in the past. So I'm really excited to hear about how you can do even more and take your art further than just, on the page or on the print. So welcome to the show. That was a really long intro, but...
Well, first off, I want to say, thanks again for having me. Excited to partake again. So
yeah, I'm just still fascinated by all these stories and how the things that people are doing with their art, because obviously there's different art styles that people draw in or paint in or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then there's all kinds of other stuff around that I think is really fascinating. And I know that the listeners find it fascinating too and encouraging. So Can you just tell us a little bit about, let's just set the stage here. What is the convention? By the time this episode is released, the convention will have already been done, but let's just talk about the convention that you have been prepping for, and why did you choose that particular convention?
All right. So I'm based in San Francisco, and I'm going to be partaking in this convention called ApeCon, or Alternative Press Expo. And this convention's, for the most part, like similar to like most, I guess, comic conventions, but I guess the major difference, it's a lot more indie and a lot more kind of like art based. So like I guess what drew my like initial attention was how it's not only just like independent like comic makers. Like there's actually like I've met graphic designers to like concept artists to pretty much anyone that any type of like creative that has like I guess the desire to just like create and just like sell stuff. And I've always had that interest ever since I was like pretty young, and I felt like this was like a pretty cool outlet to kind of showcase. And it was also like a cool way too to meet like local creatives and meet other artists and kind of interact with like a lot of like the local art community and such. So I started out with I moved here about 6 years ago, and around the time that I would say within like a month when I moved here, like Ape was going on, and I went to go check it out, and I was like, oh wow, like this is something really cool. Like it's definitely something I'd like to partake in. So the following year, like I made sure like I had stuff ready to participate.
Where do you think the name Alternative Press Expo comes from? I love it that the acronym is APE. It's just I'm going to ApeCon.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But where does alternative press? Where do you think that comes from?
Um,
Is it just like this is the alternative press? This is magazines that aren't
mhm,
Sports Illustrated or whatever magazines people read these days. I don't know. I haven't read a magazine in a long time. But
mhm.
is it that or
Well, I think
what is it?
I mean, this is just me. Like, I don't know the actual origin, but I'm assuming it has to do with the fact that, like, when you think of like say, like comic conventions, right? Like, we used to have like WizardCon, which was like a major
Hmm.
comic convention here in San Francisco, and it actually relocated to LA like a couple years ago. But yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind when you think of like comic convention is people like dressing up and like everything's just like superhero and mainstream, everything from big companies like Marvel and DC, and
Oh,
how
okay,
like
yeah.
that's kind of the mainstream spot to go to kind of to get your fix in regards to like all that. Whereas I feel like the alternative expo is kind of like the alternative option where it's like, okay, here's a place for like creatives, even though you don't necessarily do like mainstream, say comic based, quote unquote, comic related art. Here's a place you could go to like showcase just stuff that you enjoy making, everything from like DIY products to everything from like zines to posters to kind of anything crafty, even like plush. I've
Cool.
seen plush toys to, I mean, I've seen like a range of different type of stuff, but it's pretty cool because it's just like it's a nice broad range of, I guess, products.
Yeah. And that totally makes sense. And just a little side note here, that we can kind of tie in. So you talked about the mainstream. So you have your Spider-Man and your Marvel comics and your Batmans and all that stuff, and Game of Thrones, and then there's sort of like everything else. And I haven't been inside a comic book store for a long time since I don't know how long it's been, but I was walking in Frankfurt, where I'm living nearby these days, and I saw this comic book store. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's go in and check this out and see what it's all about. And I
Hmm.
was surprised how many comic books there were that I just had no clue what they were. Like I've just been out of touch with that realm. So of course, there's like the big names, the mainstream, but then I wasn't even sure. Maybe some of these were mainstream, and I know that in Germany they definitely have their own comic culture. There's comic books that you definitely are not seeing back in the West,
Hmm.
but it just kind of hit home that idea of this whole alternative thing that there's comic books out there that are great. There's The Walking Dead before it was The Walking Dead TV show, when it was, it would have been alternative, where now I guess we would argue that it's mainstream
Hmm.
Walking Dead.
Hmm.
Same with Hellboy. I would say something like that, it was started small and then there was movies and now Hellboy's is the mainstream.
Yeah.
But so what have you been prepping? What are you bringing to the convention that you're gonna display?
Yeah, I guess over time I've always been interested in making like my own like self-published books. So I've put together like a lot of different types of booklets and like zines. I've always been interested in silkscreen posters.
Hmm.
So I've been making an array of like new posters and what else have I got? I used to do t-shirts back in the day, and I decided to make a new shirt just for this. So I have that in the works. I would say the past couple of years I've been getting into doing patch designs. So I'll be selling patches. What else do I have? Yeah, that covers like I think a good gist right there. Oh, and
So
original art too. Like I have like, yeah, I'll have pieces there as well to purchase.
so I gotta ask, how do you pull off all this stuff? I know I have issues, and I have a team to produce the courses for Pencil Kings, and we have issues that it's hard to get enough stuff out. But
Hmm.
to me, the mental image that I've just conjured up is like you as this mad, not a mad scientist, but like an underground, edgy scientist who's just like toiling away and working like at all hours of the day and night, putting together this stuff. And, because there's going to be things that are wrong or broken in the process, or I can only imagine that you have to get fixed and then
Hmm.
do more of it. And then you're a little bit behind schedule and you're pushing more. Is it like that? Or am
Yeah,
I living in
yeah.
a fantasy world?
No, it's for the most part it's like you have like a set game plan in mind, and then you go about your plan, and then along the way things just kind of come up that you didn't foresee, and then you kind of have to try to like adjust to that to that problem and try to figure out like, okay, what's going to be the best way to like adjust to this or like what's going to be the best way to find a solution to deal with this. And yeah, fortunately, nothing's been too crazy because I have a lot of the stuff that I have made or that I'm making. I have made in the past, so I've kind of like worked out all that beforehand. But there's still like a little issues like here and there. Like for example, like I've been making these like these zines, and for folks that aren't familiar with zines, they're just like it comes out of I don't want to say like punk culture, but like there was like a whole like DIY movement like back in the day, and where for the most part it was just like self-publishing like magazines, and zines was just like a short
Yeah,
term.
so zine is it's like I'm sure it could be just you could have like a 1-page zine,
Right.
or it could be like a little booklet of however many pages, or it could be a long one, I guess too. And
Right. Yeah.
there was I want to say it was started in the 70s or 80s, but I'm really not sure. I'm sure that it maybe just the name zine, which is short for magazine. But it's something that anybody could come out with. You know, you could be sitting wherever you are in the world and say, hey, this idea sounds kind of cool. I'm going to put out the zine with some of my comics, or maybe do like a little comic strip. Instead of doing it on the web, you'd actually like print it out on this paper, and then you maybe find some articles that are interesting. So it's a mix of images and information. It's really just your creative expression.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just like literally you could just photocopy 4 or 5 pages, fold it in half, and staple it, and
Oh,
there you have
that's
it.
probably when the zine started, actually, was when photocopying became available, sort of like mainstream available, because then you could actually make it, photocopy 100 copies of it, and hand it out to your friends, or leave it in coffee shops, or whatever you wanted to do with it.
Yep. So I was like working on these zines, and like I picked out like really thick like quality cardstock just because I want to make sure that the quality is like really good. And the trouble that I came across was like the alignment of the pretty much like the pages, where it's like I'd have like an image that's like a full spread, and when you have like the thick paper and you fold it in half, some of the paper kind of like shifts just because the paper is so thick. So there's
Yeah.
like technical issues where like the alignment is off. And I noticed like in the proofs that I was getting made that some of the insert or the inner like the gutter part of the book, I noticed there was like some pieces that were slightly, there's like little gaps that were showing like the page that was the other page that it was connected to. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. Or it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it just shifted, because when you're putting together a book, it's like, and the reason I know this is because we're putting together a book right now, is that like you have all these pages and they're folded. Like if you look at any book on the spine, it's not just like page. It's like a bunch of pages folded in half and then sewn in or glued into the book.
Right.
And so I can see how things could get a little bit misaligned in that process. And then you're kind of, it's not like you're bleeding onto the other page. It's more like the page has just shifted a little bit, but it's enough that it's noticeable.
Right. Yeah. So like it wasn't too bad. I mean, you kind of just deal with it, but for the most part, I don't know, I was kind of bothered by it. So like I actually went in and physically changed each page and then reprinted it, and it came out like way better. So I kind of
Cool.
kind of just dealt with that. But yeah, there's like other stuff where it's, for example, like when you're dealing with silkscreen, you have to factor like paper. Like you have to use like a certain type of paper to sustain the heavy ink that's being used. And there's like other factors too, where when you're getting some silkscreen, like there's part of the process, especially if you're dealing with like multi-layers, how you have to, like say like your first layer, you have to kind of like run it through like a heater, but due to the temperature and the heat, it could sometimes like warp the paper, which could throw off your alignment when it comes to like trying to print the second color. So sometimes you have like a little like offset that you have to deal with. So a lot of times it's just like technical stuff like that. Or for example, like patches. I've had incidents where I did everything I can on my end as far as the design and like prepping up the file and like trying to make the image as perfect as possible. And then it goes to the printer, and then you get your samples back. And for whatever reason, like either the colors are off, or like there's certain stitches that are off. And for every kind of sample that you get, there's like a week delay, because it takes like a week to get a sample, right? So it's like if there's anything wrong, you have to go in and tweak the image, but then you have to wait another week to get that sample. But then if you have like a really tight deadline, a lot of times, you could be like writing the line really close just because you have to keep waiting for these samples to come in. So yeah, kind of like stuff like that where it's like stuff you can't really foresee anymore. A lot of times it's just like really just technical stuff. But there's no way of knowing, these issues unless you actually go into it and really explore just making stuff. So yeah, it's all part of it.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I can totally feel you on the delay times. It's kind of frustrating because you have your deadline that's coming up. Like you can't change the day the convention is going to start. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can push things, but with a convention, there's no way.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dang, this is messed up. So you kind of have this gut check. It's like, is this acceptable? Mm-hmm. Or does this need to be fixed? Because I feel like sometimes when we're the creator, we know what perfection or we know what's possible, and so we want to strive to hit that, because why wouldn't you want it to be as good as possible?
Right.
But sometimes you just have to make that call. It's like, yeah, it's not what I wanted, but it's pretty close, so I just have to roll with it because there's no other option.
Yeah, there's definitely compromise, but yeah, I mean, it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
Safe to say.
I remember once I wanted to make a custom gift for a friend, talking about creating patches. And I just looked on Google Images or Google Maps, and I was like, I forget if it was called embroidery that I was looking for.
Okay.
And I looked it up, and I was like, okay, there's this embroidery place. And I went there and I was like, whoa, this is a really big building. And it was just like a warehouse. Uh-huh. And I went inside, and there was one woman, and she had this like giant machine that could sew. She was doing embroidering for hotel bathrobes or something. And so she had this machine where she could queue up like 10 at a time, and it would sew everything. Wow. And she was so nice. She just like let me in. She let me do a run of one right there on the spot. Like she just stopped what she was doing. She's like, yeah, sure. No problem. Nice. And I was like, wow, this is, it's just so cool to see things actually being made. I think that every time that I've been in a sort of a factory environment, or when I see there's just we touch so much stuff every day. Mm-hmm. We have no idea how it's made. Mm-hmm. We think that it just comes like these robots are making it and putting it in boxes, but it's not. It's actually like humans making so much of this stuff that, there's more and more automation coming in, but there's so much stuff that, humans have to be involved with setting all these things and making sure that all these pieces are aligned. And then once it's good, okay, now you can push the button, but it's still very human involved. Mm-hmm. And it's just so fascinating. And I would encourage anybody, like if you're getting something made, if you have the opportunity to go and watch the process, even if you have to be sort of like behind a glass door or something, still go and do that. It's so fascinating.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, said to say, I nerd out on all that junk. Like, I mean, even as far as like, even my initial start. I mean, for one, just growing up in the 80s, like I think that's like a huge factor too, like in just being like really into like consumer based goods and such, and just how like growing up with the 80s with everything from like, Transformers to like Ninja Turtles and all that, and all the type of products that come out, and how you see like there's like a full range of different stuff that's made, and seeing what's possible. I think even like, are you familiar with like Sanrio? Like, like Hello Kitty? Mm-hmm. Like, so I spent a good part of my my upbringing actually living overseas in Japan. So I was used to seeing a lot of those type of products where I'm just like, oh wow, like someone somewhere designed these characters, but yet they just put it on everything. And there's something about that I was like really fascinated with. Like even when I was like, I remember the first time I actually discovered like a photocopy machine. I was just like, whoa, like this is crazy. I think it was like in like 5th grade. I used to take trips with my friend to the library just to photocopy my drawings, and I'd just be so stoked to be like, oh man, like I could duplicate like my drawings and like give drawings to my friends. Whereas like beforehand, I used to have to physically draw each drawing, and then I'd give away the drawing, and then I would no longer have the original. Whereas like the moment I could photocopy, it's like, oh man, this is great. Like I can give this drawing to like all my friends, but I could still keep the original. And I think from that point on, like it's kind of just stuck with me, like just this fascination of just seeing like, I guess my art just being reproduced in like other forms. And yeah, safe to say the interest is still there with me. And hence making all these products like silkscreen. Like I learned silkscreen, or the process of silkscreen printing in high school. Like fortunately I had a really good design program my junior year, and I learned the whole process of like just different methods and how like you could make silkscreen. And for the most part I got really excited because like I learned how to like make my own shirt from scratch, which was pretty crazy. And got to the point where I used to make t-shirts like for all my friends. and such. And then even when I went off to art school, like I did a little bit of that. Like I made t-shirts for my friends here and there, and I think like oh yeah, senior year, like yeah, I made shirts to sell for like part of my like I think my senior show. like sold shirts, and like I even made like a book. I think we had my very first self-published book I put together my senior year and sold along with the shirts at the show and stuff. But yeah, and then yeah, except from that point on, I mean, or since I was young, I've always just been fascinated in what's possible. Like if it's something that I could do myself, like why not just try to do it? So I would always like just I don't know, kind of just nerd out and just dig and try to find ways like in different methods in how I could reproduce my art.
So cool.
Yeah, it's just crazy these days too, because beforehand it was like really hard to try to find all these avenues to get your stuff made, where like now it's just like you could literally get anything made. It's just a matter of putting the research in and just figuring it out. But literally it's all within reach, which is crazy.
Yeah, and recently I've heard that I'm an '80s baby as well, '81, and I didn't know this until a week ago that or we are millennials. That's what our generation is called.
Okay.
And the special thing about the millennial babies is that we have one foot in the analog world and one foot in the digital world, and we're sort of like right at the divide when our brains were developing. When we were sort of like 13-ish or so, really starting to develop. Then we got all this cool digital technology, but before that, everything was analog. So we're unique in this world that people after us, they grew up with iPads and iPhones and all this stuff. And like, I'm in an airport and I see a baby walking around with an iPhone. I'm like, man, that's a $700 toy for a baby. This is pretty. We're living in a wacky time right now. So I think that's really fascinating. But I also think what's fascinating is that you've been doing this for so long. What if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, cool. This sounds interesting. Like I hadn't thought about the possibilities of taking my art to other mediums. Where do you think they should start? And let's say they wanted to do the DIY route, the do it yourself.
Okay.
Because they actually want to get their hands dirty. They want to experience it. Is silk screening that easy to get into, or is it just?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of options, but where would you think is a good place to start for somebody?
I say with silkscreen, you could actually let's see. There's a couple options. Like for the most part, like I've seen silkscreen starter kits that you could actually buy at like a Blick, or I think most kind of general. I think you could actually find one maybe at Michael's. And yeah, for the most part, you could kind of just try to check out your local like art spot and just kind of ask around to see like you guys have any type of like silkscreen starter kits. And a lot of the starter kits are pretty straightforward. Like they kind of have everything that you essentially need as far as like like your screen, your I think it's called Squeegee, like this thing that you actually use to pull the ink through the shirt. And then they usually provide ink and such. And I've actually got one of those starter kits before, and the instructions are pretty straightforward. Like to kind of like once you have that, you can kind of just like follow the instructions. And then on top of that too, you have like YouTube. You could easily look up like how to. So there's that. And then if you don't want to do it yourself, these days I actually like I was big on doing it myself early on just because I wanted to learn the process. And I think it's good to definitely just at least try it once just to get an idea of like, okay, like these are the type of issues that you're going to run into, or just kind of go through the trial and error to see like, okay, so this is what it's like, right? And just seeing like what's possible. And I felt like I'm at a point where I've had my share of experience, and I'm at a point now where I kind of just want to focus on the design, and then I just work with people that I trust that do a good job in the process of silkscreen printing, and the fact that I already had the experience beforehand, and like I'm already familiar with like how to prep the file, like I kind of worked out the trial and error, right? So like I'm more familiar with prepping the image to getting it to a point where it's like best fitted for that medium. And yeah, so for the most part, I just like right now, how I get most of my prints made is like I have like a local printer that I go to, and like I said, I prep up the files for them, have it all set up, and pretty much I pay them like the service fee, and I bring the materials to them too. It's like, for example, like my posters, like I go and buy the posters that and the type of paper I want, and I bring my posters to the shop. And for the most part, I just like leave it in their hands and then kind of trust them to follow through on printing the products. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Like as far as like getting like the designs kind of to a printer and just getting a sample back, So
I've got 2 points. One, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and one tip that I heard, which sounds like you're doing, is that if you bring your own materials to the printer, you can save a ton of money. Like if you buy the t-shirts and then take it to the silk screener and say like, these are the t-shirts I want you to put this design on, you can save like almost half, where they might charge you $7 for the t-shirt normally, and you can buy those t-shirts for like $4 or $3.50 or something like that. Same with the paper.
Right.
Whereas if you know the paper that you want, you're getting it at the price where you know it's good, instead of having to pay for the extra, little bit of extra margin on top for the printer. But how do you find a good printer? Like my experience has always been horrible with printers. I remember in art school, I would design these awesome things, take it to the printer, hit print, and like wait a day or two and be like, okay, your print's ready, you can come pick it up. Go there, I'm like, shit, that this just turned out so not what I thought it was going to be. And
yeah.
I know it's like part of the illuminescence from the computer screen makes things appear different. And so it's partially my inexperience, but I've just like that turned out really bad. I remember we went to the video game developers conference once. We're like, okay, cool. We got to make a name for our company. We're going to print these orange shirts.
Right.
Just looked nothing like they appeared online. And we picked these shirts up and we're like, all right, I guess we're looking like giant beach balls for the next couple of days, because this is, we paid for these shirts. We might as well wear them. And yeah, we did stand out, but we looked ridiculous. Like it's, when you're an art and a design company, your shirt looks ridiculous. You're not feeling at your best,
Yeah.
So how do you actually find a printer? Is it something that over time you've tried different people, or do you sample them somehow, or how have you approached it?
Yeah, I think it's just like anything, right? It's just like it's kind of like trial and error. Like it's for example, like trying to find like a good restaurant, right? Like you're not really, I mean, obviously you could probably, I guess there's probably Yelp that you could probably look up for like certain print shops, where I'm pretty sure they probably like get like certain type of reviews. A lot of times too, like word of mouth. Silk screening, printing on posters and on shirts and such, like it's a certain type of art form. So there's also like naturally you're gonna run into other folks that are like into the same type of process. So like, it's just a matter of like
even.
Oh, go ahead.
Even at the convention that you're going to, you're going to see tons of people, and I would be willing to bet that it's probably like 60 to 80% is local artists at a convention, unless it's maybe like some big thing. But and then you could just see somebody's prints and be like, man, this is beautiful paper. This is beautiful printing. Where do you get your stuff done at? And it's not like you're really competing with them for the best printer. It's sort of like your designs are your designs and their designs are their designs. So it's not like you're selling the same product. It's just part of the manufacturing.
Right.
And I feel like at these conventions, people are they love nerding out about this stuff. They love telling you about this amazing printer that they found in, the industrial district that nobody really knows about. And that's sort of their secret gem, and they're happy to share it with you. So I think that's really cool. And that's where the community aspect comes in. And it's one of the things that I wanted to bring up later, because you think of, or at least before this episode, I thought of going to conventions like, okay, I'm going to go there and sell my stuff and be in touch with fans or people that don't know me yet. But it's sort of like that business owner or like artist to customer or fan relationship. I wasn't even thinking about the artist to artist relationship. And when I've done a convention, I haven't I didn't spend enough time doing that. It was mostly just behind the booth,
Mm-hmm.
talking to people and not talking to the people. You obviously talk to the artists who are on both sides of you,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a whole convention of people with amazing knowledge that could solve literally any problem that you have.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's somebody there that'd be like, oh, I don't know how to get my stuff out to more people. Somebody like has solved that very easily. Oh, I'm having problems with my printer. Somebody has solved that. Oh, I don't know if my designs are tight enough. Somebody has solved like all those questions. There'll be somebody there that can just shortcut your learning so much, and I think that's really cool.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, yeah, that's actually a really, really good point you brought up. It's amazing how, well, even conventions aside, I think just approaching people that a lot of times the people that do their own products, they're really enthused about what they're doing. So like the moment you show like any type of interest that kind of like pertains to that, a lot of times they're really just open and willing to share like everything from the type of material, the paper, what stores they get their paper from, the printers. And for the most part, most creatives that I've ever interacted with, like anytime, for example, like I'll buy like a booklet and I'll just be like, oh yeah, out of curiosity, like, I really like the quality of this printing and the actual paper and such. Like, where did you get it printed? And for the most part, every time, everyone's been really like upfront and just like super helpful. And yeah, it's just a matter of just kind of just asking and reaching out, and for the most part, and yeah, like I said, with what you were saying with like the convention and community, I mean, like that's one thing that I really do enjoy about like these type of events, because it's like, I mean, yeah, it's one thing about like, making product and getting your art out there, but it's also coming across like other creatives that are also doing their own thing, and then even just seeing like what's possible and what kind of stuff they're doing, and then naturally, it's a way of like sharing each other's projects, and then from there you could easily just like nerd out, because like for example like the patch stuff, like I started collecting patches just kind of on a whim like a couple years ago. I actually started out from collecting like lapel pins from I used to go to like military surplus stores, and like I just found like just these really, I don't know, just really cool kind of like interesting looking pins. And then kind of like in the same section they would have like all these patches on display. So I used to kind of just like randomly collect like these funny looking patches. And then over time it got to the point where I was like, like I'm collecting all this stuff, like why don't I just like make my own stuff? So I started getting into it, and then once I started making my own, naturally I started coming across like other patch makers, and then it naturally just be befriending like all these other creatives that do their own, or like that nerd out over their own patches. And I've learned like so much just from like seeing what other people have done, and even just like just like the natural like interaction that you'll have, just coming across other creatives that are nerding out over something that you're interested in. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. I know that for me, I have my little Facebook group where I nerd out over people who are setting up, like learning platforms like Pencil Kings. But whatever you're interested in, you don't have to feel alone. Or if you are feeling alone, it's like get out of the house, start, and it doesn't have to be a convention because there might not be anything going on, but there could be like a local drawing club. Or I know that when I lived in Vancouver, they had a youth drop-in center where you could go, and they had all the screen printing stuff. They had like a sculpture room. They had all this stuff, and it was free, like literally free art supplies. All you had to do is drop in. I was a little bit old to be there, but they didn't care. They were just happy that someone was there. And these are, I'm sure they have them in the U.S. as well, but I feel like it was a government-sponsored program, or maybe like a privately sponsored program. So they made sure that there was somebody to run it, and that person was paid, and they had the art supplies. But you could just go there, and then that can be the start of your network. And you're not going to click with everybody, but eventually this becomes your like group of friends. These are the people that you've been looking for so long. And man, life is so much better when you're sort of like on this journey together with other people. And
Yeah.
I say this because I'm a total introvert. I'm always inside.
Yeah.
But when I have gone outside and I have met people, it's been so rewarding. So if you're like me, don't do that. Like at least once a month, try and push yourself to, put down the Xbox or turn off Netflix or whatever you're going to normally do and just take some time online. And if you can't find anything, you could always start something. You can start like a little Facebook group that says, artists in Cincinnati or wherever you're located. And, it might take a little bit of time, but people will be attracted to it. And
yeah. No, that was crazy. Like, I mean, yeah, on that note too, like, even like with going back to like the patches or whatever, like, yeah, like I felt like the past, yeah, it's safe to say like it's the past couple of years, like I guess to a certain degree, it's kind of been trending. I think. I don't know if it's just from just me being involved with making my own and kind of just following up on it, but in general, it feels like it's starting to trend a little bit to the point where like I'm just starting to see them everywhere. And yeah, like on that note, like kind of like what you were saying, where it's like sometimes you kind of just need to just start something where like for example, like there's this guy, he's based in New Zealand, and he purchased a couple of my patches before. Or I would say before. Like,
how did he find you? I gotta ask this before you go into the story. He's in New Zealand. How does he find you?
Oh yeah. For example, well, for one, like aside from like making the products and such, like I'm into like just kind of just like putting it out there too. So like I'm pretty big on or pretty active on Instagram as far as like just kind of like every time I make something, I'm like quick to like share and such. So so when I started like making like my products, like I'd always like share and kind of using that as an outlet to kind of like promote and sell my products. So I guess this guy found me through Instagram, and I think not too long after that, he started his own Instagram account called Patch Game, and with that account, like he showcases like all these like independent like patch makers, and it started off small, but it's grown like I think it's around like 70,000 people right now that are like they're following it, and it's crazy too because like I'm pretty sure I think he started it like earlier this year, but yeah, I think he just started off as just like as a collector of just collecting like all these patches, and then he just started showcasing everyone's pieces, and it's like one of those things where it's like kind of like once you kind of make an outlet and also kind of put it out there, like naturally people will just find your way. It's kind of like, I guess that what do you call, what's that phrase? Like if you build it, they will come. Like that.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of like
definitely. I totally believe in this. Like, and I've done it myself where you just start something like, I don't know if this is really going to go anywhere, but if you stick with it and you're genuine, like you're trying to improve and you're connecting with people and you're putting out your best work, whatever that best is. Like even if there's somebody who's 1,000 times better than you, if it's what your best is, that's good enough, and then just, people see it. They're like, wow, this guy's like or this guy or girl, they're starting out. They're being really honest. They're really raw. This is so cool. I'm tired of looking at all this polished stuff, and then you build from there and build from there. You get a little bit better camera. Your pictures start to get a little bit better. You get more shares. That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it crosses over into like even with your own art, right? It's like if there's a certain type of art that you like to create and make, you do enough of it and you kind of put it out there, like naturally people that want that type of work will find their way to you to get that type of work, right? So it kind of it goes the same thing with products. Like if you build this or if you create a certain product, naturally people will find it to some degree. It's just a matter of like, kind of just getting out there, I guess. So
we've gone a little bit long with this episode, but I think that's good because people have been asking for longer some people say they like the short. Some people are asking for long, so we'll try and satisfy everybody. But the last thing that I want to ask is, what advice do you give to somebody who they're listening to this and they feel a little bit inspired that maybe I could do something here. Maybe patches. We talked about lapel pins. We talked about silk screening and prints. There's a whole other world of stuff that you can do. What would you recommend to that person to get started? Is it, well, actually, I'm not even going to inject my own thing. I'll just let you take it. How can they get started? What's like the simplest action? Because I'm really trying to encourage people to take action, and I believe that it's just like it's often just a baby step, and then it's like you have to complete it once you've taken this first baby step.
Yeah.
And so if we can give somebody that little tiny, easy to do thing, what would that be?
I guess I could list like a few like key things to probably keep in mind.
Sure.
So I guess the first thing is probably, well, first off, it's like, what's your aim in making the product, right? It's like, do you want to make the product as a business and like really make money off of it, or do you want to make it just to make it? And
let's say just to make it. So
okay,
we don't know if it'll be a business. We're just sort of like dipping our toe in the water, seeing what it's like, but we're still not sure what to do.
Okay. Yeah. So if you were to go that route, I would say, let's use the example of like t-shirts, right? Like if you wanted to make your own t-shirts, I would say definitely study the market in regards to like, just say like the t-shirt market, or well, I would say well, there's that, but you could also study like what, the type of t-shirt you want to make, like what category does it fit into, right? And if, like how are your designs going to like fit that market, right? And I mean, as far as like paying attention, everything from like what's been done, what hasn't been done, everything from like pricing of t-shirts to the quality that people make or a company makes to like what's trending at the moment relative to the theme that you might be trying to explore. And so there's that aspect. And then also once you actually take a dive into creating the product, I would think one key thing that's like for sure something to be aware of is try to keep your overhead low. And then I've seen, like I've had some friends that kind of like jumped in and just t-shirts, for example, like they'll go ahead and buy like 100 t-shirts of their first design. And the downside with that is just like, if the t-shirt's not a hit, you're sitting on like 100 shirts. And so like going into it, you definitely want to start low and make sure if you're going to invest money into like whatever that product is, like try to aim to at least break even. That way you're not in the negative. And there's going to be times in the process where like you're going to go into the negative, but that's also a lot of times that's just like kind of like the trial and error of creating stuff. But for the most part, try to definitely keep the overhead low, just because you want to try to stay out of the negative as much as possible. And then I would say, yeah, I guess the next step from there too is, I guess once you actually have your product, put it out there and just see how it does. And in the process of putting it out there, definitely keep an account, presentation, like the presentation of the product, because that presentation goes a long way. And also kind of exploring like different outlets in regards to like promoting whatever that product is, whether it be like social media or like going to conventions or trade shows or whatnot.
I'm just going to stop you before you continue and get your thoughts on this, because
okay.
What do you think about this? When I was listening, I feel like you're at the experience level now that these are all very critical things if you want this to be your career. But for somebody who's just dipping their toe in the water,
okay,
what do you think about this for action steps? And you can critique this, and maybe we can riff on it a little bit.
Okay.
So you look at your existing drawings. Hopefully you have existing drawings. And you look at them all and you find something that you think would look good on a t-shirt, preferably something that doesn't have a lot of color. Best is probably just one color, black and white, so that your costs are going to be as low as possible. There's the littlest chance for error. So you find your one t-shirt design, then you call or find or send emails to people who could possibly screen print your t-shirt in town and ask them, hey, I'm a new artist. I'm wondering if you have any discounts for new customers and what your minimum order is. So you send that email to to those people, and maybe you get a discount. Maybe you find out what your minimum run is, and maybe it's as low as I don't even know what's realistic, but let's say they would say, you know, because you're a new customer, we can do a run as low as 5. It's going to cost you more money, but that's like the physical minimum that we would ever think of doing. And you're like, okay, 5. What's that going to cost me? It's going to cost you $20 per t-shirt, because it's such a low order, so it's $100 or whatever it is. Then you rationalize, can I get this $100? I need to sell these t-shirts for at least $20 a piece, which I think is realistic when you're an independent. You probably want to be selling for more than $20. And then you get those printed, keep one for yourself, and then you try and sell those 5 to your friends. Mm-hmm. That's it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one route you could go. I think.
And that way you. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say. Oh, you can finish and then I'll comment.
Well, I just feel like that way, like the stakes are really small. $100, maybe you can borrow that from somebody. It shouldn't be too difficult to sell 4 of your t-shirts as long as your design is good. I mean, you could ask your friends beforehand what design they like of maybe 3 of your best designs, and then you could ask them, hey, if I make this into a t-shirt, would you want to buy it? And they say, yeah, okay, give me $20. Now you've got the money in your hand before you even go to the screen printer. Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to think of like, what are these tiny small actions that somebody could say, hey, I'm now a t-shirt maker. I went from an artist to a t-shirt maker. I've only made 5. Uh-huh. I'm not selling to Walmart or anything like that, but I did the first little baby step and I know what it's about. Now let's see if I can sell 50, or let's see if I can sell 25 or something like that. And you just sort of like scale up. But this is the very beginning basic thing where you take something that's drawn and you turn it into a real product, and then people can enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as another alternative too is these days there's a lot of outlets for print on demand. Like you're familiar with like Cafe Press or Zazzle.
Yeah.
So for the most part, like there's no upfront cost at all. Actually, there's no cost at all. I think on your end for the most part. Like you just register onto the site, and they pretty much have like all these templates for like different types of products, everything from like mugs to t-shirts. And you upload your image, and it goes on to like whatever the surface is, and you could actually have like an online, like I think, link where you could actually sell the product, and if somebody buys a shirt, there's a base price that it starts with, and then you add a certain amount more if you wanted to like get a return, and then you have that on the website, and then when that product sells, you get a percentage of that sale. And there's no upfront cost. Like you didn't have to pay, right? You didn't have to pay like so and so amount for like 20 t-shirts. Like if you just wanted to make that one t-shirt, you could just make that. And it's like I said, it's print on demand, so there's no
setup fees.
Right.
But here's my last and final question, because I think that's totally the way to go. But my experience when I got my orange shirts that I was really unhappy with, that's the road that I went.
Right.
And I've only printed out one other t-shirt since then.
Okay.
And one was with Zazzle and one was with Cafe Press. So I'm not saying that they don't do this, because I think that they can do good stuff, but I just didn't know what to ask for maybe.
Right.
And so the next time when I printed something out, it was just like super faded. And so I learned my lesson. Printing on orange, you're going to want to go the silkscreen like pro route.
Right.
So then the next time I was like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit smarter. I'm going to print on white. This should turn out awesome. Looked really faded, and the design was like too big to be fit on the t-shirt. And it just looked like really scrunched once I saw the shirts, and I was really kind of disappointed. How do I get around that so that I get it right on the first go when I'm doing the print on demand? Is there any trick to this?
So the print on demand is tricky just because you just don't know what you're going to get. And there's no physical store you could go to be like, oh, okay, so this is a Cafe Press sample, right? Like I've experimented with Cafe Press in the past, and the only way that I could see the sample is if I just like made my own shirt. And then once I made my own shirt, then I was like, oh, okay, so this is pretty much what I'm gonna expect. Right. And then I kind of like work around that. Where the upside with like going to like your local silkscreen printer is they'll have samples there. And you could actually work out the design with them, where it's like, okay, so you have a design where it's like, okay, I want this design, and depending on that design, they'll accommodate what's possible, right? So for example, like say if it's like a full color image, they're gonna explain like different methods and how they could reproduce that, and they'll just kind of run you through like the technicalities that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to reproducing whatever images that you want. But the upside with the local spot is you could actually feel and see the quality, everything from like the t-shirt quality itself to like the actual printing, and it's cool too just to go to the spot in person, because you get to see examples of their past products, and it's easier to just kind of point at an example where it's like, okay, I really want my shirt to look like this with this design, like what's possible. And a lot of times, I mean, for the most part, these places are like a service spot. So for the most part, they're just down to work out whatever's possible. And
So I guess this really will be the last question.
Okay.
What's sort of the minimum order that you've heard of for like patches and for posters and T-shirts if you're going to a printer? Like, do they do one-offs, or is it? I mean, it's not economical to do this because they have all these setup fees that you gotta, they have to actually prep all this stuff so that you can print it. But what's sort of like a realistic minimum order for people?
On T-shirts, I would say average for every, I would say on average like 12 to 24 is usually the standard, and then it kind of goes up in 12s. And say like for patches, I think I've seen go as low as 12, but for the cost, it's not worth it. You're better off just going for like a higher amount. So I think with patches, I've seen anything from like 12, 25, 50, and then 100, and then obviously, cheaper. It goes cheaper the higher you go. But like starting out, a lot of times you kind of just want to keep it low, and then do a steady build. It kind of going back to like the overhead thing, where it's like, if you're gonna just kind of test it out, definitely start low, and if you see that it's doing somewhat well, then kind of steadily build from there.
Totally. All right. Well, this has been great. I feel inspired. I want to make a Kill All Robots T-shirt. I once saw my friend. He had a Kill All Artists T-shirt, and he was an artist, so it was sort of like tongue in cheek. But it was really shocking when you saw this shirt. Wow. It was like Kill All Artists. Wow. But Kill All Robots. I'm feeling a little bit of anger towards my phone, and I consider my phone a robot. But I feel inspired to make some T-shirts. I know we are making some T-shirts for Pencil Kings.
Nice.
And we're gonna give those a shot. So. Best of luck at the convention this weekend.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going to have show notes for this at pencilkings.com/Dennis-Brown-2, since this is the second time we've had Dennis on the show. And actually, Dennis, throw out your URL so if people just want to go directly to your website. Where is that?
Oh, yeah. So my website is bagger43.com. It's BAGGER43.com. And like I said beforehand, I'm pretty active on Instagram, and my Instagram is at bags43. It's BAGS43, and through my Instagram, I post like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, everything from patches to everything. Like I said, anything from daily drawings to patches, posters, whatever. So
awesome. And I just want to ask the audience, if you like this longer format, let me know. I mean, it's more work for us to edit all this stuff, but if you like it, please do drop me a line at mitch@pencilkings.com and let me know what you think. If you want to see more long format episodes, and if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/pencilkings, and we've got some rewards there for people. So thanks a lot, Dennis. I really appreciate it. And that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks again.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.